that was weird because it's not something that could possibly happen in this day and age. I was 7 years old and I'd gone to a big exhibition at the Royal Academy, something like that. And there was a chap there called Professor Bogushishko. He was quite a famous artist in the 70s. He did these quite dark abstracts. And I was sitting sketching at the exhibition, and he came up to me and saw my work, and he started talking to my mum and asked whether I'd be interested in coming along. That on the weekends he did like a weekend session with postgraduates who were doing their MA. So there were 8 guys in the mid-20s and this professor who did this big like studio thing in Bayswater in London, and this little 7-year-old girl sitting there sketching and drawing. And it was a really amazing experience because he was saying that, the fluidity of my lines and this, that he could see something in it. And it made me even more passionate about what I was doing. But as I say, can you imagine these days it being allowed for a 7-year-old girl to be in a room full of adult men painting nudes? But it was amazing for me as an experience. In those days, none of that existed. None of this kind of, this is appropriate, that's not appropriate. None of that existed. People just got on with life. And, you didn't even think about that kind of thing. And I just remember it as this amazing memory that every Saturday I would go and I would paint. And when I came out, my mum used to take me to the little French patisserie locally and buy these little shoe buns and little marzipan animals. And that was my memory of my weekends, painting and marzipan animals. My dad was an architect, and he was always saying, oh, you've got to look at perspective, and it's got to be about light. And that was quite stiff and stilted. And this professor was like, just let rip, just do what's in your heart, just let it flow. So what it taught me was just to go for stuff that, rather than worrying about the rules, not that I do in life in any aspect, but that just to do what I want to do, it was worth doing. So I did that for about a year, and that really got me into like proper painting with oil paints. At the time on the TV, there used to be a program called Paint Along with Nancy Kaminsky, and she would do these like abstract oil paintings. I'd be sitting there at home, with it kind of just sparked even more of me realizing how much it was part of me to do it. My name's Anita Nowinska. I've been working as a full-time professional artist for about 25 years. And as you look around, you'll probably realize that nature is my thing, is what I paint about. When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was create. My mum used to put me in the bath when I was about 4 or 5. She'd come back in and I'd have carved all the soap into little animals. The garden path was covered in drawings, so it was what I always loved doing. And my mum bought me my very first set of oil paints when I was 4. You can imagine the mess. That's kind of where it started. But then I was young in Maggie Thatcher's era, so you didn't go and do art, and I kind of went off and ran a business and wasted 15 years of my life doing stuff that made me ill and that I hated doing. And then during the dot-com crash, around the millennium, all my clients went under and I lost everything. I lost my business and I lost my house and my partner and my friends. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because in that moment I found an old box of pastels that I had, and I realized that when I was being creative, I felt no stress. I wasn't upset. It was good for me. It helped me. And I just literally made a vow and I said, that's it. I am going to do what I love for the rest of my life. And that's when I rekindled my painting and started with my big flower paintings. And it went from there. And I realized that if I'm not painting, I get ill. And that still happens. If I stop painting for a month, I get ill. It's that important as part of my life to do. big flower paintings were sort of where I started, and that's what I got quite well known for because nobody else was doing anything like that at the time. And my work started being studied on the GCSE and A-level curriculum as a modern comparison to Georgia O'Keeffe. And then during COVID was a big breakthrough point because I couldn't go anywhere. And I live in the countryside, and my neighbours have got a beautiful meadow that they let go wild every year. And they gave me permission to sit and paint in their meadows. So for me, it was heaven. I just spent my life sitting in meadows and walking around the hedgerows, painting and sketching, and just completely immersed myself in that. And that's when the meadow paintings started coming out. It was also that I realised when I started putting them online that people who were shut in at home during lockdown were saying to me, oh my God, I look at that and it makes me feel like I'm outside. So I had hundreds of prints and I sent them into some of the inner city councils and said to them, if you've got an older person or something in a tower block, can you give these to people who are struggling? I was putting wild meadows into people's homes when they were stuck at home. Just got some really, really lovely feedback from people. You've stopped me from going nuts. I got to a stage with the big flowers where I found it quite easy to do them. So, so I could just, I'm going to do this. And it became very, very easy. And I always like to challenge myself. I like to push myself. I like to get out of my comfort zone. So I would go and find something. So I would look at a meadow full of grass and flowers and think, I can't paint that. Where would I start? And I make myself find things that I don't think I can do and find a way of doing them. I go out and sketch. I spend a lot of time in meadows and gardens and just being out. So I do lots and lots of sketching, and I can take 3,000 photos in a day if I go to a garden or something. So when I start painting, I've got an idea of a color scheme, a mood, something that I want to express and capture. And I might use 10 different paintings and 10 different sketches, and it just seems to come together by itself while I'm painting, and it changes. So I might go in with one idea, but the painting does what it wants to do, and it ends up being something very different because just as I'm painting, the process moves along and changes, and they end up being what they end up being. To me, the palette is like a history of my paintings, because it's like, the layers of each painting that have been painted. I've been using this palette for about 20 years. History of my paintings.
We are like complete opposites.
You need a world full of complete opposites because everything then balances itself out. If we were all the same, the world wouldn't really work, would it?
No, that's true.
I think my work originally was really tight because I'd had this voice in my head from my dad. It's got to look like what it is. You've got to work on perspective and light. And my work, I think, as I go along, is becoming freer and bolder and bigger. And I care a lot less about any rules. I just do what feels right for me. And that's the process that I really enjoy, sort of watching things evolve and change, and each painting hopefully being better than the last. How do I know when a painting's finished? I'll tell you how, because do you know how many paintings I've ruined by over faffing? A lot. By over faffing. Sometimes I'll even just like rub things out and start again. But now I step away from it. I'll work all day and then look at it and think, okay, I'm starting to go too far into that, and I'll just sort of pare it back. And it's something that I didn't used to think about, and now I think about a lot more, of actually it's really funny because when I started painting, when I'm doing what I call the underpainting, they're really loose and very, very abstract. It's, areas of colour and light and shade. And sometimes I look at them and I think, actually, I really like that. And then I evolve it more. But I wonder whether as time goes on, I might start kind of being more interested in that loose thing at the beginning. I've done some abstracts, and the problem with making a living out of art is that it's like there's a business aspect to it. So, like in any business, you've got to have your I guess they call it your brand, something that you get known for. So, like I got really known for the big flowers, and now it's the big flowers and the meadows. But as an artist, if you want to evolve and if you want to improve, you can't just limit yourself to doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So what I do is that the sort of the side of things that's out in the world on social media or on my website are the things that I'm painting from day to day. But sometimes, funnily, that you're here today because last week I got myself into my son had just gone back to uni and I'd been painting lots of smaller stuff because it's what the market wants. And I found myself getting trapped in this little bubble of, oh, I've started thinking about selling my work instead of creating my work. So I got myself into a bit of a pit and felt a bit down. And my answer to that is then to explore. So the big painting that I'm working on at the moment is a big landscape and it's completely different. And it won't go on my website. It won't, but I need to do that. I need to experiment and explore. And that's kind of given me my mojo back. And that's how I do it. I will do landscape, or I'll go to the beach and there'll be massive waves, and of course they inspire me. So I'll sketch or I'll paint, and I'll do some paintings of that. But they don't go out into the world as my body of work. If that makes sense. I just do them because I want to do them. Maybe I'm a bit hairy fairy, but I have a very strong belief that human beings have got a really strong genetic link to nature. There's still a little bit of caveman in all of us. So I think we respond to the seasons. People quite often say to me, "Oh, I feel really miserable." I said, "Yeah, but it's December. You're meant to feel tired and miserable because this is the time when you would have gone into your cave and and there wasn't any food around." So I think we're linked to nature, and I think nature is the greatest healer. Being out in nature, they've proved it scientifically now that nature heals, that nature makes you feel good. And I've always had that link all my life to wildlife, nature, flowers, meadows. My son always laughs at me because we're driving along in the car and I'm seeing animals and landscapes in the clouds. So he's quite used to me driving along going, dragon. So, oh God, here we go. She's off. So yeah, so nature is what constantly attracts me. And I feel well when I'm in nature. I feel well when I'm painting nature. And it's part of my well-being, not just what I do, if that makes sense. It's such an integral part of me, actually, to the point where I paint out on the terrace in the summer. I think something my mum says sometimes that there's an energy when I'm painting. The blue tits out there come and sit on my easel quite often when I'm painting. I've got some little there's hedgehogs that come, and there's something about when you're in that flow that nature feels comfortable around you, and it's like the animals and the wildlife isn't scared. We've had woodpeckers on the terrace while I'm painting, and it's quite weird. These are my little hedgehog friends.
Oh my god.
So their mother died It was, when we had the really big heat wave last year. So there were 6 baby hedgehogs that I looked after. And it's so funny because, then they live in the wild and they were out in the gardens and all over the place. And if there's a heat wave or there's no food or water around, they literally would come onto the terrace and throw themselves at the door to bang at the door because they knew that I would give them food.
Oh my gosh. And you can just hold them.
Yeah, and then I had a little baby mole. It was my little friend for a while. Oh yeah, so I've got that. And then the blue tip babies fell out of their nest. I wanted to paint a dragonfly, so one came to visit. I wanted to paint a dragonfly. I wished I could paint a dragonfly, and one flew into the house and sat on my finger.
Gosh.
That's my life. My life is full of crazy miracles. My life is insane. And my son's the same. That's my son with little blackbird he rescued from a magpie. Nuthatch. One of the wildest birds you'll ever come across.
Oh my God.
Flew out there. Flew onto my hand.
That's crazy.
Every year I do Devon Open Studios. This is the first year I haven't done it, actually. I'm doing South Hams Arts Forum. So people come to the house, and actually my home is my studio because I care for my mum full time. So I can't be in a studio outside of the house anymore. So the house is open like a gallery, and people can call me and just let me know they want to come around. They come around anytime. But Open Studios, I've had people come here, and there's one lady particularly that just, she made me cry. She was in a wheelchair and she had obviously a lot of pain. And she spent about 3 hours here, and she just kept, I'm sorry I'm here so long. I said, that's what I want you to do, is just enjoy the work. And she said, I've stayed so long because it's the first time in 20 years that I felt no pain, which was mind-blowing. And over the years, I've had more and more of this kind of feedback of people. I had another person come to Open Studios from the village, and she says, I've come to get my youth serum. And I said, excuse me? She goes, well, my neighbour came to see you the other day, and she said that when she came out, she felt 10 years younger. So she sent me. But people seem to somehow relax, and it's weird. It's another one of these hairy-fairy things you'll think is mad. I sometimes think that there's nothing special about me at all. This isn't me doing anything. I sometimes think that I've just been given something that I'm meant to give to other people. And I've had so much bizarre feedback. They've now scientifically proven that nature and images of nature create serotonin and endorphins in the brain. So they do genuinely make you feel good. They help people heal faster. They're good for mental health. And the painting, it just keeps me happy. And it seems to do that for other people. And it makes me feel incredibly humble and incredibly blessed that there's something that I can do that gets that response from people. So when people get my work, it's like, over the years, as I say, I sell paintings, and you've got your London prices and your Dubai prices. And I quite openly let my clients know that when they've paid full price for a painting, they are allowing me to give something to someone who's never going to be able to afford something like that, but who needs it, to who it really makes a difference. And to be honest, this has been my hardest year yet in regards to art, because the British economy is in pieces. People are really struggling. And the world, if you put the news on at the moment, it's very easy to feel really down because the world is just full of awful, awful stuff. My personal belief is that as human beings, if every single one of us could do a few kind things every day, however small, whether it's smiling, being nice to a shop assistant, or whether it's something else, the more good stuff we put out there, we can kind of balance out the negative energy, if that makes sense. I paint all the time. And this year, the work has gathered up because not as much of the big stuff is selling. And there was one day where I just had this, I was outside in the middle of the night on a beautiful starry night, and I was sort of not meditating, but just kind of sitting there breathing and looking at the sky. And this thing came to me, I need to put my work somewhere where it's going to do some good. So I got in touch. There's a hospice in Bristol, St. Peter's Hospice. They'd recently had a refurbishment, so they've got sort of blank walls everywhere. And I decided to donate quite a big collection of my work to them, because in a hospice, you've got patients and you've got families at the most difficult time in their life. They're losing people they love. They know that they're there and they're probably not going to come out. So I've donated 59 paintings to the hospice. And first they were saying, oh, should we sell them for the charity? And in the end, we mutually decided that what we want is for the paintings to be in the hospice for the patients and families and the staff as well, who have really hard jobs to enjoy. So the whole place now is going to be filled with meadows and flowers and landscapes. And it was just the right thing to do. And it's helped me make a decision that from now on, that kind of idea of mine about giving where it's needed, that 50% of everything I do from now on is going to go to hospices, to children's wards, to old people's homes. And in fact, I'm going to do like a Patreon project just to help with the materials, because they cost a fortune now. And I'm kind of saying, you buy one, I donate one. Half of what I'm doing is going somewhere where I know that it might be giving someone a little bit of hope, and the stories of the paintings are going to be written up, hung next to the paintings. So hopefully it might give a little bit of relief, a moment of feeling a little bit uplifted at a difficult time. It's just made me decide that that's now going to be part of my practice. There's an exhibition that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and I want to call it Senses. I would like to do this kind of show where you walk through a series of rooms of different moods and different, using the art, but also then having, a sky projected on the ceiling and the smell of aromatherapy or flowers coming. I would like to create an exhibition and put it on somewhere big where schools and disabled people and the public can come and get completely and utterly immersed in nature through art. Just experience it. So if you're in the middle of London in the smog on a rainy day, to walk in and to feel like you are being surrounded by nature and sunshine, that's something I'd like to do. It's been in my mind for a long time, but it's about finding the funding for it. It'll happen. Find your passion and grab hold of it and just go for it, and don't let anything or anybody stop you. So if you have something that you're passionate about, if you're creating, if you're doing something, whether it's filmmaking or whether you're a journalist or whether you're a painter or a sculptor, whatever it is, or you like fashion design, as human beings, if we're given a talent, if we're given something which brings passion out in you, the best life you could, what's that saying these days? Living your best life. Well, the way you're going to live your best life is doing what you love doing most as you're living. There can't be anything better than that, surely. And young people are discouraged. Go and get a proper job. Go and do this. Go and do that. And my answer is, okay, you might need to do that for a while to save some money up and get you going. But if there's something you want to do, you grab hold of it, you get help, you talk to people, you get people to help you, and just be really determined and do it. Because if you can do it, you're going to have the best life you can imagine, because your whole life isn't going to be work. It's just going to be doing what you love.